Nice.
Insert disclaimer here. I just wanted to point out that we've purchased this kit with our own money. Atkinson Vos, however, have been incredibly helpful with giving us guidance on how to fit the mats. Unfortunately, delivery took over 2 months when we first placed the order because they were having issues with their supply chain. This may have been resolved by now, but if you want a set, I recommend getting your order in.
As you might know, this is an old German Army Unimog, and as such it's got various brackets and fittings for rifles and ammo and whatever they needed. I'm the kind of guy who would rather fix things step by step rather than tear everything down and realize I've torn too much down. So what we're doing here is we're fitting the rubber mats, and then we're realizing, oh, that bracket needs removing, so we'll remove that bracket, and then we'll fit the next one and remove another bracket until the mats fit. And as you can see, after a bit of effort, all the pieces were in place. Okay, so we have now test fitted the Atkinson Vos rubber mat sound deadening kit, and looks pretty good, doesn't it? However, we need to trim stuff. We need to cut some bracket off from the cab, which I would have loved to done before I painted it, but because I was alone yesterday, maneuvering these mats would have been quite difficult, so that we will have to do. And they are made so that you have to trim stuff off depending on your Unimog. They're all slightly different, so they have left proviso for cutting them and shaping them to fit, so we're aware of that, and that's by design, not a problem. We've also marked around the holes and the perimeter of it so that we know where the Dynamat will be visible if we add it to those areas. But yeah, so it looks good, it fits. We figured out the puzzle, and we'll pull them out and cut the brackets. Probably rust proof around the brackets a bit, and then we will start the Dynamat process. So it looks pretty good, A bit of time has passed and we've got the silent coat fitted in the cab. It's time to do the real fit, and the process is pretty much put the rubber mat in, check where it doesn't fit well, or if there's something protruding or something that we need access to, take it out, fix that, put it back in, and then go over that process until the mats fit really well. And here I am showing you how I drilled the holes to access these bolts on the front of the gearbox cowl. Keep in mind that if you don't need access to these bolts, you do not need to drill these holes. You might get away with a small dome or a little bit of a cutout. Also keep in mind, with that in mind, that you might want to close up the holes where the bolts were if you're not putting the bolts back in. Some of the bolts go straight through the floor. Now is also a good time to splash a bit of paint on the parts that's going to be visible that you don't want the original color. Okay, one more time. I think this might be the one. And with 2020 hindsight, this was a mistake. If I would have sat down and thought about it a little bit, I would have known that it was a mistake. You just can't get the precision using a marker pen and then taking it out and drilling it like I'm doing here. What you want to do is you want to have the mat in situ and drill it right then and there so that all the bolt holes line up. I'll show you the better way to do it in just a second. At the moment I'm trimming the driver's side rubber floor mat, and it's going really well. The floor mat's really nice to trim. This is the Atkinson Vos kit, if I haven't mentioned it before. And I'm using a Proxon long neck grinder. Proxon is spelt like that. I don't know if you can see it. Proxxon, and it's got a little flap disc on it, and it's really efficient. It really gets a nice smooth surface on it. And then I'm just using a sharp knife, a maker knife in this case. Thanks Giaco, love it. The issue I'm having at the moment is that the rubber mat is a little bit too big. Now there could be two reasons for this. The first one is that they've made it deliberately too big and you're supposed to trim it down. I'm perfectly happy with that because I think every one of these Mogs might be slightly different, so trimming it down to custom fit is probably a lot better than just have a one size fits all. However, because we've added the silent coat onto the floor of the cab, we have inadvertently reduced the width by about 6 millimeters. I think it's 3 millimeters thick standard. So if we look at the tub from side to side, we've reduced it by about 6 millimeters, and obviously 6 millimeters is beyond the tolerance of how tightly a mat like this should fit. So I'm basically just taking it out of the cab and putting it back in, out, and then grinding, cutting, smoothing it over. And it's getting better and better all the time, and it's really hard work because it's like carrying a dead body, a sack of potatoes. So it's really difficult to get it into the right spot and all that stuff. So, but I'll show you some of the edges that I've done. This one here, which is at the top of the driver's side. So this is where the steering rack goes. So this is up at the top left corner, and it's really smooth, and this is just thanks to this one. So I really like this material. It's really easy to work with. It makes a hell of a dust though, so either wear a dust mask or don't care about your health, or do it out where the wind is blowing it away. So I'm gonna now go and test fit it again, and then probably a few more times. I think that's about 5-10 times in total that it'll be before I've got it into place. Whilst you watch me trim the driver's side mat a little bit more, I wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that I have set up a Patreon account. If you find these videos useful, maybe they even save you money, or maybe they just gave you a good laugh, it would be lovely if you supported me with a few dollars. Thank you. And now it's time to prepare the passenger side mat. You should know the drill by now. Sand, drill, cut, clean, sand, drill, cut, clean, all the way until it fits nicely and you're happy with the result. Take extra care to position the holes. These ones are slightly off, so they didn't fit that well, but it worked out in the end. Okay, so the passenger side rubber mat is in. It's taken some trimming to get in, but it's now in there. Next thing I need to do is to drill the holes for the riv nuts and mount the door threshold thingy. I'll show you the trims that I've done. First is here next to the door trim, and then there's there next to that cable. Then I've had to do all of the holes so that you can get screws down for a seat. Then up at the top here, also for the door. And then this bit here is cut off quite a lot to basically get it in there. It would fit better if I didn't take it off, but this way it's easier to get actually into position. And then I've trimmed that bit there a little bit, so now those are completely flush there, and it's looking pretty good. Obviously this height here is probably due to the difference in the height of the Dynamat stuff, the silent coat underneath. Now this is the way I recommend you fit the threshold. Measure the holes out, mark them with an awl, drill them using a scrap piece of wood underneath so you don't drill into the actual truck, and then obviously clean up and then fit the screw. Start down at the bottom at the valley so that the mat gets taut in that position, and then continue towards the front and the rear from there. This way you should be able to cinch the mat down really tightly with a good fit. once you have all the bolts in, it's time to take them out. Maybe you want to enlarge the holes a little bit, and then it's time to try to fit the actual trim. This one might need a trim too, so a trim, and then it's time to try to get the bolts through the trim and the mat into the riv nut. I'm using a Dremel to enlarge the holes a little bit sometimes to make sure that it all fits, but it looks pretty good when it's done. And here's the abridged version of how not to do it. As you know, I already had the holes drilled in here, but they were nowhere near where they should be. So here I am re-drilling the pre-drilled holes, so it's a bit of a re-pre-drilling. Even with a bit of wiggling, the screws don't fit. So again, the Dremel tool to the rescue, and have to elongate, enlarge the holes, and keep doing this until the bolts fit through. And once you got one bolt through, it's just a repeat process for the rest of them. I could have saved that time, and I would have been without double holes or very oblong holes. And here you can see how much some of the original holes were misaligned. Not very pretty. The Atkinson Vos rubber mat kit is now pretty much fitted. I just need to fit the top one here, but the big parts are now done, and it looks really quite good, I must say. I have had a bit of issue with this side, and the issue is that I didn't do it in the correct organic way. The passenger side, as you've seen, I drilled the holes with the mat in situ, whereas this one I marked the holes and took the mat out and drilled the holes away from the vehicle. So when you are doing this, I would highly recommend that you drill one hole specifically here in the valley and the dip, so that you get it squeezed into position. So start with these three and put the screws in, and then work your way out to each side. That way it squeezes down nice and tight into the valley, and the contours are correct. I also used the Dremel tool to make the holes oblong a little bit if they needed, and in these ones here you can see that the flathead Torx bits aren't actually covering it up, but again, it's not a problem. It's here rock solidly. It's really quite nice, and we can do a bit of a banging test here too, so that is pretty solid compared to what it was before. I'm going to leave that because I need help with the levers to get it in place. But yeah, onwards, eh? Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I have a lot more videos already filmed. I just need to find some time to edit them and publish them. And as usual, the YouTube shenanigans are always appreciated. Like, share, subscribe and all that. Thank you. I hope you will join us when the next episode comes out. See ya!